I think it's always helpful in most cases to generate at least some buzz if you can, and
Mm.
also to start to build your list a little bit. I mean, this is getting more tactical now, but really my main theory about marketing is focus on your website first, focus on
Mhm.
building up your email contact list, and then layer in things like social media and advertising on top of that. But if you are pre-launch, that can be a really good opportunity to start to build that audience and generate some buzz.
This is The Anonymous Marketer, a podcast where we tackle the biggest questions from the B2B marketing community. But instead of bringing on guests for a quick chat, every question comes from an anonymous source. These are the questions B2B marketers have, but are afraid to ask. Let's start the conversation.
Hello, and welcome to The Anonymous Marketer. I'm your host, Kirsti Lang, and I'm really excited about today's show because we are going back to marketing basics, sort of. And frankly, I could use a refresher. Yeah, so really excited to dig into it today. My guest is Sara Jensen, principal of Brighter Messaging. And when an old colleague of mine recommended her for the show, I jumped at the chance to have her because we had a question come in from a listener recently that I had no idea how to tackle, and Sara is perfectly placed to do it. We'll get into that. Sara, thank you so much for making time for me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, finally. I think we've rescheduled this about 3 times now, but we're doing it. We're recording.
That's right.
We're getting stuck in. This is what happens when you are moms and you have full-time jobs and you're doing, podcasts and all sorts of things.
Yeah,
It's a hustle. It is a
it
hustle.
is.
Yeah. So Sara built her career in strategic sales and marketing, and in 2012 launched Brighter Messaging, a digital marketing agency that helps small businesses manage their online presence. I'm going to say that again because my husband is coughing. We share an office. It works really well. So Sara built her career in strategic sales and marketing, and in 2012 launched Brighter Messaging, a digital marketing agency that helps small businesses manage their online presence. She launched the company out of a desire to help people who were saying things like, I know I need to show up online, but I have no idea how to do it, which is basically the question that we got from our anonymous marketer today. As a refresher, if you're a first-time listener to the show, all the questions we unpack on the show come from anonymous marketers. And if you have one that you want an expert like Sara to answer, you can head over to marketersindemand.com/anonymous, submit your question, and we might unpack it on the next show. So the actual question for today, I have to take like a running jump up to every episode just to get all the housekeeping out of the way. So here's the question. I'm building my own business in the B2B space. I've built most of my product myself and I'm almost ready to launch. I'd love to bring on a marketer, but I don't have the budget right now, hopefully soon. What's your advice for getting news of my new tool out into the world? We have a basic website and social media, but nothing else. Thank you. Thank you, Anonymous Marketer. Sara, I feel like this is the kind of thing that you deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, truthfully, there's a million different ways that you can go. I think we all know that there's so many shiny objects out there and things fighting for your budget, and it can be really tempting. Be like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. But how do you really know what's going to work? And so what I advise people to do is really just take a step back for a minute and get super crystal clear on your target audience and who is really the audience for your product and what is your value proposition to that audience. And so you probably think you already have that, and you probably do have some portion of it. But what you probably don't have is a really detailed kind of profile of who you're going after. So, being in the B2B space, you want to understand, first of all, the types of companies that are going to be clients for your product, but also who within that company are you selling to? What is their role? What is their demographic? What do they care about? What are the problems that keep them up at night? All those kinds of things. So in B2B, you kind of have to do both of those things and get that really crystal clear understanding. But when you do that, it's suddenly you go from all of that shiny object syndrome to, oh, now I have a clear idea of who I'm targeting. It makes it a lot easier to make those decisions in a more strategic way. The other piece of that I wanted to talk about is the value proposition. And there's a lot of names for these things that people use in the marketing world. Value proposition is my personal favorite, so it's the one I use. You might hear like USP. But your value proposition is, what is the problem that you solve best for your target customer? And how do you do that for them? And it's really interesting. It's not necessarily tied to the problem that your product itself solves. Like, I'll give you an example. If you're in a really commodified industry, I always use an example. We had a client we worked with a few years ago who installs fences in people's yards. So it's like there's not a lot out there. You can talk about sort of quality of materials and some things like that. But, their value proposition ended up being more about how they deliver that service. They show up on time. All of their workers are employees. They're all uniformed. They're in wrapped vehicles. They're polite. So it's really much more the experience of getting them to build your fence. That was what they brought to the table.
I love that. That's a great example.
Yeah. So it's a way for them to really differentiate. And so that's what I would encourage you to think about with your product, because once you know who that target audience is, well, what problem do you solve for them? How do you solve that problem in a unique way that nobody else in your industry can necessarily claim that they're doing? So that's really where I would encourage you to get started. Figure out those two things, because once you do that, it gives you those kind of strategic guide rails to make a lot of the other decisions about your marketing.
Yeah, that is a great point. I love, because I think people will probably go straight for the medium, right? So they'll go to websites and socials and all of those different shiny objects, as you say. But rather than shooting for the medium first, you need to get the message nailed down. And then you can kind of start to figure out, okay, where is this message going? But I want to come back to something that you said initially, Sarah, about target audience. And this is something that I've kind of always struggled to grapple with a bit in my role. So figuring out exactly who you're speaking to. You get to some companies and they have personas, and that's like Sandy from Chicago and she has 2 kids, or whatever the case is. What is your favorite method for kind of pinpointing the target audience?
Yeah, sometimes we do the personas. They can be useful if we're working with a client that has quite a few different audiences. I really like to focus more on that problem that you solve, because that problem tends to be a little more differentiated between each of your audiences. And so, it might be that you deliver this product and you're delivering the same product to everybody, but maybe you deliver it in a different way, or maybe they use it in a different way. So that's the focus that I like to take. We do have on our website, if you go to the resources page, we have a free download on there of strategy questions to help you think about who is your target audience and what is your value proposition. So it really gets kind of deeper into some of those things. And then, from there, it's up to you if you want to create personas. If that's useful to you, go for it. But some people think it's silly, or that, they just don't find it useful. So, yeah.
Okay, that is a really good tip. I am going to go and download that resource because I think that's going to be very helpful for me as well. Okay, so getting back to the kind of the main thread, at what point, so this is a founder, they're about to launch by the sounds of things. I would love to know what product they're working on. I wish I had more detail on that. But I'm such a tools junkie. So I'm like, what are you making? Can I see? Can I play with it? Yes. So this is a founder. At what point did they need to be thinking about marketing? Do we want to be building up a hype ahead of launch ideally, or is it kind of when you have something to deliver, or does that kind of depend on whether you are product led or, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends a lot on what the product is, but I think it's always helpful in most cases to generate at least some buzz if you can, and also to start to build your list a little bit. I mean, this is getting more tactical now, but really my main theory about marketing is focus on your website first, focus on building up your email contact list, and then layer in things like social media and advertising on top of that. But if you are pre-launch, that can be a really good opportunity to start to build that audience and generate some buzz. So again, if it makes sense for your product, are there some fun things you can do? If it's a software product, like maybe you have a group of beta testers or you have preview demo days or something, it's so dependent on what it is. But yeah, I think the sooner the better. Of course, that also puts some pressure on you now because probably if you're doing that, you've got to promise a delivery date. And so
Yep.
you
You
need
got
to
to
make
commit.
sure that you can hit that. But yeah, as long as you're confident, then, go for it.
Yeah, I've been at startups previously where we've kind of had, a founder that loved the pre-launch hype, and then, by the time the date rolled around, oops, sorry. It's not that is an incredibly stressful situation to be in.
The other thing that gets tricky with that, and I mean, you see this a lot in software, it's like somebody is working on a feature and then they get a new idea and then it changes the focus. I
Yes.
mean, and
Yes.
actually, we see this happen because we work with book authors as well. And we see this happen as they're in the process of writing their books. Like,
That must
anytime
be
you're
so much
going
fun.
through a creative process, if you're really being honest in the process, things are probably going to change as you're going along. So, just another
Yes.
thing to think about if you're doing pre launch marketing, like, are you really sure that this is the thing that you're going to be putting
Yeah.
out into the world?
I mean, that's so tricky because if you want to be building up a bit of a hype and you want to be, as you say, pinpointing that problem that you're solving, I mean, yeah, but not kind of you don't want to paint yourself into a corner. Yeah, that is incredibly tricky. So would you advise kind of waiting until you have your product crystal clear, or whatever you're selling crystal clear, before you kind of start to think about generating some hype and setting up websites?
I mean, I think it all comes back to that problem. What is the problem that you're going to solve best for your customers? Because that's really what your marketing is going to be built around. And so
Right.
if that's it, once you've got that clear, I think you can pretty much run with that. Now, if you're getting into the point where you're setting up demos and then showing people a feature and it's going to get axed later, then like that can be a problem. But,
Yeah.
marketing around that problem, and you're probably maybe familiar with the story brand methodology for writing websites. Like, we love that. We don't use it on every site, but we use it a lot. And it's a really great way to think through what is the problem? What is the solution that you bring to the table, kind of as the hero of the story? And so that's if you can get outside of the thinking of the details of the product and think more about the audience and the problems that you solve for them, then that gives you a lot to work with marketing wise.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And this is something that you've already kind of touched on, but I wanted to ask you about the bare bones. If you only have like this much capacity, what are the things that you need to set up? You mentioned a website, you mentioned email lists. Are
Yeah.
you happy to lay that as a foundation for marketing when you're strapped for resources?
I mean, I would put the most resources into the website, honestly. Get
Hmm.
that SEO going because that takes a lot of time to build up, but it
Yeah.
can pay dividends for such a long time. So, yeah, really having a good website, like don't settle for a, subpar website just to cut some costs in the beginning because it's going to come
Yeah.
back and bite you in the long run. The email list, definitely. I mean, MailChimp is free. I think it still is up to like 1,000 subscribers or something like that.
Mm,
So a lot of people
yes.
start on there and, eventually you move off when it doesn't really meet your needs anymore. A really overlooked piece of low hanging fruit is the Google business profile. That
Oh,
is huge.
yes. Yes. It drives me
Yes.
mad when businesses don't have that information.
Yes, it's
Anyway.
free. Like all you need to do is set it up and claim it. It's pretty much takes care of itself. So don't forget to do that. And then, when it comes to social media or other types of sites, this is so dependent on who your audience is. I'll give you an example. We started working with a client last year and they were like, well, we're really killing it on TikTok. Like we have tens of thousands of followers. People love our videos that we post on there. And I'm like, well, that's cool. How many leads do you get from TikTok? And they said,
Oh,
well, none. And, as we worked on who their audience is, that demographic of people that they were targeting with their service isn't using TikTok.
mm,
So really be strategic about where does your target audience go for information, and that's where you need to have a presence. You know, if you're a restaurant, you better be on Yelp. If you are a medical provider, you better be on Health Grades. Like it's so industry dependent, but look into what are those platforms for your industry? Where does your target audience go for information? Those are the ones where you really want to put your effort into it.
Okay, there are so many things that I want to kind of go down rabbit holes on that you've said now. But the first one is, can we go back to the website? And you said,
Mhm.
don't kind of skimp on a website, make sure it's good. If you could kind of give us, like, what is a checklist for a good website? What makes one really, really good?
It's really a website that can grow with your business over
Mhm.
time. That's one of the things that we see in a lot of companies that we work with who, they started out on using like a Squarespace or a Wix, and then they get to the point where it's just not meeting their needs anymore. They
Mm.
need different features, they need better design capabilities. Um, it used to be that those sites really weren't great for SEO. They've all come a long way, but I still don't think anybody can beat WordPress when it comes to SEO. And, what we build on there can really be optimized in so many
Mm.
ways. So make sure you're working with somebody who understands kind of what is your long-term vision and what are the basics that need to be put into place for SEO. The other piece of it is the security and maintenance of your site. So it can be very tempting to just sign up for like a low budget hosting
Mhm.
program and throw your site up on there and then never think about it again. Well, unfortunately, what happens, and we actually see this with a lot of WordPress sites, people get a site built and then they want to host it somewhere and then they don't update it for like 5 or more years. And then they're like, okay, we need to make updates to our site. And we go in and look at it and it's so out of date and broken that, it's
Mm.
really just we have to start from scratch. And I hate to see that. So I always recommend to people that you have a hosting and maintenance partner who is keeping an eye on your site for you, like making sure your forms work. It happens more often than you would think that people realize they haven't been getting notifications from the contact us
Yeah.
form on their website. There's so many things that can happen. And then of course the security component of it as well. Like have really good usernames and passwords because once your site gets hacked, that's a huge hole to dig yourself
Yeah.
out of. And you don't want to go there.
No, absolutely not. Starting a business is hard enough. That is
Yeah.
the last thing I would want to be dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's stick to marketing fundamentals, please. And then coming back to that mailing list, I know it's kind of a big buzz in the marketing world that people are talking about owned platforms, owned media, and mailing lists are often kind of touted as a great example of that. Is that why you kind of feel like that they're the best course of action, or are there some other benefits to having a mailing list rather than, say, setting up your socials?
It's really so that you can own and control your contact with people because there's so many people that will build up an audience on Facebook or some social media platform and then their Facebook gets hacked or they like the algorithm changes and suddenly nobody's seeing their posts. I mean, there's
The
just a
algorithm.
million things that can happen that you don't control. So like I love social media. We use it with all of our clients, but it's not the core focus. Our core focus is really bringing people onto that mailing list because you
Mhm.
ultimately have control of that. No one can take it away from you. No one can deplatform you. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things you have to do to maintain the quality of your list and make sure that people are going to get your emails and all those. That's like a whole other topic. But yeah, I always recommend focusing on that over building up a big social media following.
And where do you start with kind of putting together a mailing list? Where do you gather those contacts from if you're starting from like ground zero?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it really depends. In a lot of cases, the founders have, just a spreadsheet of email addresses of people. And so that's oftentimes where we start is just kind of go gather up your contacts, people who have been interested in your product in the past or
Mm.
people that mentors, anybody, like anybody from your contact list. Like let's start there. Um, but really, this is where content marketing can really shine because just like I mentioned earlier, we have those strategy questions on our website. Well, that's an opportunity where you can fill out a form on our website. You give us your email, we give you a piece of content. Now I'm building my list, right? So think about what are those content opportunities. It doesn't have to be a PDF or a white paper or something like people traditionally think of. There's loads of different ideas. Again, so heavily dependent on your industry. I remember back during the COVID times, we have a client that's an accounting firm, and I can't even remember what the tax conundrum was, but they made this little Excel calculator to make this thing easier to figure out. And we put it out there on their website just as a tool that people could download, to be helpful.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is a great way to build your email list.
Yeah. You're kind of giving that value up front, tangentially related to your product or whatever service you're selling. And then, I feel like people are comfortable giving up their email addresses for something that they really value.
Yeah.
Not just to look at your website. Please don't do that. So coming back to socials, you touched on this before, and this is something that working at Buffer, I've written a whole lot about. One of our kind of target audiences is small business owners. And the decision for which social networks that you're going to choose from all of the major ones. Of course, you've got to look at Google business profiles. You've got to look at stuff like Yelp, as you mentioned. But of the major networks, I would love to find out, could you kind of give us, so for a B2B audience, for example, let's start there. Where would you recommend that this company sets up their first social account?
LinkedIn is probably, in most cases, the biggest one for B2B. That's where the business conversations are happening. People have mixed views about Facebook, but I think as many problems as it has, there's still a lot of value there. And that does give you the opportunity, and this is where thinking about who is your buyer within within your business customer. That sometimes gives you the opportunity to reach those people that maybe don't necessarily use LinkedIn.
Yeah. And to your point about Facebook, I think we actually just did some data analyses at Buffer. And so we know that link only posts, for example, are just performing terribly across the board. So if you want to, link out to your website, link out to content that you've created, it's not the best idea to be doing that on social. It's not going to perform as well as like a video or even a picture or something like that. But Facebook is the one platform where people are still getting link clicks over and above LinkedIn, over and above X, Twitter, for example. And I think, just to your point, as like an interesting kind of side note, is Facebook is great for sharing links. So
I think
better than most other platforms.
Yeah, a big difference I see between Facebook and LinkedIn is the groups. Like LinkedIn groups seem, I don't
spammy.
know. I'm not in any LinkedIn groups that are really useful.
No.
If someone has one, I would love to join it, because I sort of have this belief, like, there must be a LinkedIn group out there that everybody
Should
uses.
we just make one? Let's set one up.
Maybe so. But Facebook groups, on the other hand, wow, they're so active. And, again, it really depends on who you're selling to. You got to figure that out. But it's like hyper local. There's so much going on in groups that can be really, really productive for businesses to be spending time in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. And I interrupted your train of thought. You were kind of going through Facebook. You discussed LinkedIn.
Oh, yes. Those are kind of the two biggest ones. We end up talking a lot of people out of Instagram, because
Interesting.
the clients that we work with, not all of them, but many of them, do not have a service that lends itself to a lot of visuals. And that's what Instagram is. People want to go in there and look at beautiful things. And so, I'll use the accounting firm example again. Like, there's not a lot you can do on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't want to see your books.
Yeah. So it's not really, that's not really worth their time. But, if you're in something where you do have a lot of really great visuals, like we work with a custom home builder, they do great on Instagram because the photos are phenomenal. But those are kind of the big ones, honestly, that we use. We don't really play in a whole lot of the other, like, smaller platforms at this point.
Yeah.
The other thing that I will say about, especially on LinkedIn, is look at not just your company page, but the profiles of the individuals who are the principals within your
Yes.
business, like especially in B2B.
This is my
Yeah.
favorite topic to talk about.
Yeah, that's so important because company pages don't get nearly as much play on LinkedIn
Yep.
as individuals do. And so, this is something where if you do have some budget to invest in some social media management, hire somebody who can create posts for your principals or your leadership team, especially if they're people who have any kind of, professional network from their past roles. That's going to be a lot more productive for you. And they have a million other things to do. So they're a lot less likely to go in and do it
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah. When I read this question, my first thing I wanted to tell this founder was, have you created a LinkedIn profile for yourself? Have you started talking about what you're building? It is so powerful. To your point, I think I read some data the other day because I write a lot of content about this. I talk about this a lot. I love LinkedIn and employee advocacy. And I think it is posts from employees get 3 times the engagement and double the click-through rate if there's a link included. It's crazy. It's mental because people want to
Yeah.
hear from people. They don't want to hear from brands. They
Yeah.
don't want to hear the founder's
Yeah.
story. They don't want to hear your marketing, mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. Yeah. And because your LinkedIn connections, I mean, gosh, I don't remember what year LinkedIn started, but I set up my LinkedIn profile when I was probably very early in my career. I'm not going to say how old I am here, but a long time ago. So I have connections with people that I knew many, many years ago, many jobs ago. Like
Yeah.
you build that network over time. And not to say that you're necessarily keeping in touch with all of those people on there, but that's where you kind of have that trust factor of like, oh, I know so-and-so, I worked with her at this place 10 years ago, and going to interact with her post.
Yeah. No, it is amazing. It's such a powerful tool. I was chatting to a marketer who is on the hunt for another role at the moment, and she's looking to get into tech. And I was like, so LinkedIn is probably the answer to your problem. Yeah, I will wax lyrical about this all day. If you are interested in learning more about LinkedIn, we have a fantastic episode with Lorraine Lee that you can check out on Spotify or Apple Playlists or YouTube or wherever you're watching this right now. I think it's 2 episodes ago. But yeah, I don't want to steal too much of Sarah's time plugging this horse. One of the other questions I wanted to ask you, how would your strategy differ for a founder at this level if they were in a B2C space rather than B2B?
I'm going to clear my throat for a minute.
Well, I'm going to have a drink.
Okay. Yeah, good. Well,
Quick break. Yeah. Okay, we're back.
I mean, I don't think it differs a whole lot. It's more the tactics that are going to differ in a B2C space, but you still need to get crystal clear on who you are targeting with your product. And in B2C, it happens in B2B too, but I think even more in B2C, people are likely to say, my product is for everybody, like every human eats, so they need to buy my chips or whatever. But no, it's not. And you're really shooting yourself in the foot by trying to market a product to everybody in the world, because not everybody in the world is going to buy your product. But, if you can get clear on like this product is for middle-aged suburban moms who are into yoga and like to eat healthy. Just by me saying that, now you have so many more content opportunities, right? Because you know who you're talking to. So getting crystal clear on that target market is really the biggest thing. And it's also the biggest thing that people tend to skip over in the beginning.
Yeah, that so much of the content I create now is, so who are you talking to? Find your audience. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go and download that resource because I think it's going to be incredibly helpful for me. And you can have my email address, Sarah. That's fine.
There we go.
I'm sure. I love that value.
We only email once a month, so we won't get spammy.
Well, that's nice. It's good to know. Thank you. I like to know going into the relationship. Okay. So if you could talk to this founder right now, hopefully he or she is listening, what would you say to them?
It's really that fundamental piece of focusing on your audience and your value proposition. Like that is just everyone that I talk to, I try to kind of evangelize about that because so many people skip it. And also a lot of people think that they have it, and then you get them in a room together and they all disagree. And so
Get them in a room together with someone from their target audience? Or
no, sorry. Like you get the leadership team in a room together
that's
and they all think that they're going in a different direction. Or even like when we do a kickoff for a website or any kind of marketing strategy, I mean, depending on the business, we like to try to get some of the people who are interacting with leads or customers on a daily basis. So like salespeople or office manager sometimes might be in there, somebody who's out in the field, like doing things. So because they're the ones who are actually talking to customers. So, tap into their expertise because they're hearing that stuff every day and they might actually have a quite different understanding than you do,
Yeah.
who's kind of sitting in the office running things from the top.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of brilliant content ideas I have had from salespeople, like
Yes.
marketing and sales, just need to be talking to each other more.
Yes.
That is another soapbox I will jump on and get off real quick. Otherwise, this is going to be a very long episode. Sarah, along some of the lines, you may feel like you want to skip this question, but I always ask people at the end of every episode, is there anything that you feel like you need to add to this conversation that we haven't talked about already? Is there a missing piece of this puzzle?
I think it comes back to the SEO piece, which we touched on a little bit. But what I really want people to know, especially small businesses out there, is that you can win at SEO, and it is worth your while to pursue. You don't have to be going up against, that whatever the 800-pound gorilla is in your industry. Like get hyper local or whatever. Get the more specific you get, the easier it is. It takes time. SEO is a really long-term strategy, but it is absolutely worth it because once you get to that point where you're getting organic traffic, all of a sudden you take control over your sales funnel because,
Yeah.
people are coming to you. We work with so many clients who have built their business on repeat and referral customers. And those are great. I mean, that's how most people get started anyway, but they want to change something. They either want to get to the next level or they want more control over their pipeline or something like that. And SEO is really something that enables you to do that. And it's, compared to like doing pay-per-click Google ads, things like that, those are fine. But as soon as you stop paying for them, they stop generating leads for you. Well, that's
Yeah.
SEO. You don't really have that problem,
Yeah.
once you get there. So be patient, but have an SEO strategy from the beginning, like thinking back to our founder, because it takes a lot of time, but you'll be glad you did it.
So you've just prompted a whole other question with that response.
Yeah.
If this if this founder did have the budget to bring on a marketer, would you recommend they brought on someone with SEO experience first?
I would. I mean, that's where I try to counsel people to get started is really focus on building that website as your key platform. Get some content going. Again, it really depends on what is your product, what are you selling? But when you know that problem that you solve for people, you can create endless content around it. It's not hard to come up with. And I think sometimes content marketing gets the short shrift because people think, "Oh, I'll just do it myself,"
Or I'll just
when I
write
have
it with
time or
ChatGPT.
whatever.
Please don't do
Yeah.
that.
Oh, no, no,
Please
no,
don't
no,
do
no, no.
that.
It's really worth investing in working with a good writer, and a good writer knows how to work with you in a way that saves you time. You shouldn't be giving them ideas and outlines and research. They should be doing all of that and then coming to you to say, does this truly represent my brand voice? Is this accurate within my area of expertise? But, a good writer, once you get a relationship with them, they are going to save you so much time and do it in a way that generates far better results than you would be able to generate yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. As a writer, I love the way this discussion has concluded. If you need to find a good writer, message me on LinkedIn, message Sarah. We have recommendations. We will help you out. We will point you in the right direction. There are lots of good writers looking for work at the moment.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sorry, I don't know if you heard this. We're struggling. We're struggling out here. Okay. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. That is everything that I wanted to talk about. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, and just a reminder again, if you are an anonymous marketer and you do have a question for us, please go and submit it via the form, marketersindemand.com/anonymous. If it's another question for Sarah, that's great. She can come on again. We'll reschedule another 6 times and we'll get another episode in the books. But yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. It's been great to chat to you.
Yeah, thank you. This was really super fun.
Thanks for checking out this episode of The Anonymous Marketer. This show is part of Marketers in Demand, a network of podcasts featuring the world's leading B2B marketers. Unlock your full potential as a B2B marketer by going to marketersindemand.com.